Thank you for joining me today on Ready Aim Stamp. Today we are going to make hidden flap pop-up cards. I watched a couple of videos, one by V-Tran and one by Rachel Tesselman, and then I just kind of took both of their methods and melded them together, and then changed a few measurements for my end results. So this was one of my first ones that I made, and I used Lighting the Way and then some old paper pumpkin designer series paper or card bases that I cut up. And then I used Starry Night or Starry Sky and Orchid Oasis for my paper. So this one I put a design there, and then when you pull it out, you get a pop-up. And I used a acetate or window sheet right here so you could see the pretty night scene behind the lantern and the lightning bugs. So that's my first one. And then I had played with my measurements a little bit and used Playing in the Rain, and along with that really wonderful designer series paper and basic gray cardstock and balmy blue, and made this one. I love the raindrops. And then I used seed beads on thread right there to just give it kind of a fun effect. I was hoping they would be a little more movement when you opened it, and popped it up and it went straight up, but that's all right. I really like the effect anyway. And again, I used a window sheet there. So I have one little spot on there that likes to try to get hung up on that one. Then I made this one. I used the Alphabet a la mode dies and one of the new online exclusives basic embossing folders to get these little bumps. Then I used Coastal Cabana and Bermuda Bay. When you pull that out, I didn't do anything on that part, but these are my goosebumps. I love the Silly Goose set. So hopefully people think of the goosebumps when you're cold, and then haha, surprise. All right, so let me clean this up and then we will get started on this fun card. I found it very helpful in making this card to design a little template that I could use to show how all that action works. So I had done that and only partly assembled it. I'll just show you here. This little cellophane piece is kind of part of that magic and how it gets put on. So I mark up my card because no one's going to see the inside of that part with where I need to put my tear-in tape. And that really helped make this process go a lot smoother. So I am going to do something different today than what I already have. And we're going to do, for our pocket part, it's going to be this black. So for that, we need to cut our cardstock to 5 1/4 by 10 inches. And that's why I have my little extra arm out, so I can get to that 10-inch mark. And then we are going to score that along these long edges at 1/2 inch and at 3/8 inch. Now the 3/8, here's the 1/2 inch. Let me see if I can. Okay, so on the right hand side, the 1/2 inch is right here. And here's the 1 inch, but we want the 1/2 inch. And then this mark here is the 3/8. On the left side, here's our 1/2 inch. And here's the 3/8 inch mark. Okay? That can be a little confusing sometimes. So here we go. We're going to line it up at the 1/2 inch. I tend to use, on the smaller ones, I tend to use this right hand side a little bit more, but that doesn't work for everyone. And I'm going to score that really well, because I really want these to be easy score lines to use. Now I'm lined up at that 3/8 inch. And you can see those score marks. And then I'm just going to turn it, and I'm going to do the same thing along this other edge. And 3/8 inch. Okay, now it doesn't matter which end you start from on this. We're going to score at 5 1/2 inch and at 5 5/8. So I start at my 5 1/2. And then 5 5/8 is that middle line that's in between 5 1/2 and 5 3/4. And you can see, whoops, that. Now I am going to make sure I have this longer section. This part's the larger section that's been sectioned off by my score marks. And I'm going to line it up again with the 1/2 inch. And I'm going to start with my blade at the bottom, and I'm going to stop at the top score line, just slicing that up. Let's see. So that just went right up to there. And then I'll use my paper snips in a minute to trim that little edge off. And then I'm going to turn it, line it up at that 1/2 inch. And I'm going to come down to that farthest score mark at the 5 5/8 inch. And take the snips and just snip that off. And snip that off. So now we have kind of a little funny looking shape. Okay, now I'm going to set this aside for a minute because we're going to cut our little fun flap panel, our hidden panel. I'm using Sweet Sorbet. We're going to cut that to 4 inches by 10 inches. And then we're going to make 3 score marks on this one. And they are going to be at 4 3/4, at 5 1/2, and at 6 1/4, which is a little harder to see because it's over in this little gray spot, but it is fairly well marked. Okay, and we're going to set our paper trimmer aside, and I'm going to pull in my bone folder, and we're going to fold and reinforce these score lines. Okay, so that one would be a valley, and then a mountain. And then, oops, we're going to do another valley. So then when you flip it over, you have this little part here that you can have as like a little stand, and that's where we're going to attach anything that we pop up. So before I do the final step on this one, on my other cards, I had made a little panel either out of designer series paper or one that you stamp on here, but I want to use the Sweet Citrus and Hybrid Embossing Folder on this one. So I'm going to run over and I'm going to run it through the embossing folder to emboss only this top section here. I'll be right back. All right, here we are. And there's our embossing. One of those beautiful textured detail things. Okay, so now this is how, oh, look, I cut through on that one. Be careful. Might have to back that with something to keep it safe. All right, so I am going to go ahead and cut another piece of cardstock just to back this, and I'm going to go ahead and cut that out of Sweet Sorbet. And I'm going to cut it at 4 by just a little bit less, 4 by 3 3/4. So first I'm going to cut the 3 3/4 chunk off of this leftover Sweet Sorbet that I had. And then I'm going to cut the 4 inches off. And have this little tag left. Alright. I'm going to use my multi-purpose liquid glue. First, I am going to take it and I'm going to put glue on just this little side of this flap. And I'm going to fold that over and press it down really well. And then I can put glue on this side that I need to reinforce because I was a little too aggressive with my embossing folder. And just cover that panel. I want it to line up well, but not interfere with that folded side. There we go. Rubbing your bone folder over the back of something that you put adhesive on, especially with the liquid glue, just kind of helps make sure that all those pieces kind of join together and become happy. Okay, so there we have this panel that's going to be our flat panel. I'm going to make this fold here really good because we get a little bit of bulk there. And that's why we do these extra little 3/8 inch and 5/8 inch lines, is because we need to make this little pocket for our extra thickness. All right, so now we're going to set the Sweet Sorbet aside and we're going to look at our basic black. And I'm going to just take this and I'm going to fold on the 1/2 inch one because that's easier for me. And I'm going to burnish that fold. And then through trial and error, I have found that it's easiest for me to concentrate on these little, on this side, even though this isn't the direction I want it to go, and stick my bone folder up there and kind of just help ease that fold. Fold it the wrong way. And then I can fold it the correct way. And it meets up and follows that crease a little better. So now we have this little sleeve right here. We're going to do the same thing to the other end. And I'm going to do that. Whoops. And once more. There. Now we have our other little side flap and pocket. now I'm going to take this and I'm going to fold it at the 5 5/8 line. And then do the same thing for this larger section, just trying to pull out that that line, that score line, and make it easier so that I don't have a horribly wiggly thing on my hands, because that is such a small section. All right, and then I'll fold it the right way. And reinforce that. All right, and there we have it. Our little flap area is all ready to go. Now, while I have this out, I am going to go ahead and mark for where my tear and tape is going to need to line up. And I just use my little quilter's ruler. You can use any ruler you want. So I want to line up with the 1 7/8 inch mark and just make a line, and then I slide it over and I make another little line. You can connect the lines, you can leave them as they are, it doesn't matter. It's just for helping us to guide us along. So then I'm going to go to the 2 1/8 mark and I'm going to make a line and make another line. So this section in here is where I want to line up my tear and tape, and I'll show you that in a little bit. And it's mainly this line, but for me it helps to have the second line. All right, so for our fun little mechanism that we're gonna put our tear and tape on, we will want a piece of cellophane, and you can use the clear envelopes that they sell, but why would you do that when you get wrapping, cellophane wrapping around your embossing folders and your die sets? And guess what? It works great. So I'm going to bring my paper cutter back in, and I am going to cut the cellophane. I'm going to cut this edge to make it clean and no longer connect. Whoops, not with my scoring blade. Okay, there. Cut that edge, and I'm going to cut this edge because I don't want it to be connected, because that'll double up my measurement. And I want it to be 2 1/4, 2 1/4. Cut that. And then I'm going to cut off a piece that is 2 1/2. So 2 1/2 by 2 1/4 of cellophane. Whoops. And I'm going to pull this over here so hopefully you can kind of see the edges of the cellophane better. And I'm going to take my tear and tape and I'm going to place it on along these edges of this where it's the 2 1/2 inch side. So 2 1/4, 2 1/2. And you don't want any to be hanging off. Sometimes it helps you to see it by placing it on top of like a colored cardstock. And I'm just going to line it up on that edge. There's a little bit of cellophane peeking through right here, and that's okay. So then I'm going to put a piece of tear and tape along this edge. There. Oops, you can tell I got some off the edge, so I'm just going to trim it off because I don't want it gumming things up and sticking where I don't want it stuck. There we go. And while I have my tear and tape out, I'm going to apply it to these flaps on our pocket. And again, I got it a little long. Just trim it off. And all right. And then I am going to take this piece and one edge I'm going to just fold over and kind of burnish that fold. And with our little flap, and we want the shorter part, we are going to line this cellophane and tear and tape up somewhat in the middle, just along that edge, where all those folds are. Just like that. Okay. Now I'm going to bring in the Very Best Trio Punch. And I'm going to line up. This is the long section that's going to have our little sentiment or message in it. And I'm just going to make a slot for our ribbon or twine, whichever we decide to use. All right. Just easier to do that before we connect it to this bigger piece. So here's our lines, and here is our tear and tape. So I'm going to flip this whole panel over, and I'm going to kind of line it up, and I am going to try to center this Sweet Sorbet panel between the basic black, and then pull it down to where it's this tear and tape matches up with my lines. Okay. And this line here, positioning is important because it'll determine if you have it too far up here, then when you pull your card out, you're not going to get it pulled out all the way, and so you won't have the pop-up. And then if you have it too close, it'll pull out too far, and then it's just kind of wobbly and no good. Okay, so then if you kind of get this to where you're going to make sure it works by folding it all up, just kind of holding the pocket down. There we go. So that one might have been a little bit close, but it'll work. Okay, so now, even though things are kind of weird and wonky, we're going to go ahead and decorate our panels for this. And for those, I cut a piece of Designer Series paper. It's the In Colors with the Sweet Sorbet. Gotta flip my paper over. 4 inches by 4 1/8 inches. I cut a piece of white to 3 1/4 by 3 7/8, and they are going to layer like that and be on our front panel. Nope, it was like that. So, and it looks like we could have done 4 by 4, but that's all right. I'll look at it in just a sec. Let me get this. kind of where those flaps are down. Yeah. Oh, that's the way it goes. Sorry. See, this is why we check things out before we... All right. Stamp them. All right, so we're going to stamp on this white panel. So I'm going to set it the way it needs to go. Set these aside where they need to go. For the very inside sentiment, I have a piece of white, and it is cut to 3 3/4 by 3 1/2. And if I was doing a panel on this back here, it would also be cut to 3 3/4 by 3 1/2. But on this one, we have that embossing, so we're not going to do that. All right, so I'm going to take the fun little flowers out of Sweet Citrus. And I have Mango Medley. And I'm just going to do some random stamping with that. I'm going to wash off my stamp. And I'm going to pull in some Sweet Sorbet. And do some random stamping with Sweet Sorbet. And then I'm going to bring in the single flower and Parakeet Party. And stamp it in a few of those spaces that are kind of left out. And yeah, that'll be good. Okay. So then I can choose to either use a panel. Yeah, I think I'll make a panel with that. And I'm going to stamp a sentiment. And this will help me get it kind of lined up straight also. And I like to pull my panel off and then look at these guides and see if it was lined up well. I'm going to have to pull it out of the camera for me to see it well. And it looks good to me. So I'm going to grab a stamp case to support this arm, and I'm just going to ink this up with my memento. Try to keep it in the camera view. Crowding myself here. Okay, and then I'm going to ink it up again. Some people are very good at lining up with their clear blocks and getting it precisely where they want. I can't do that without my Stamparatus. Oh yeah, there we go. That's a great impression. So I can put this away. And I am going to just use my paper trimmer to trim that down. Let's see where that falls. Okay. There we go. And I think we'll do those little, let's see, I don't want it quite that long there, so I'm going to just make my little flag ends. Still hangs over. We'll see how that looks. See if I need to trim it down a little bit. And it could be, we'll do it at an angle. Because I'm good. I'm quirky like that. All right. So there is our outer panel. And we can go ahead and assemble that just to have it kind of taken care of. So I'm going to use my liquid glue. And I'm going to use some glue dot, or some dimensionals. And I'm only going to use dimensionals on the outer part. I'm not going to use any dimensionals on the inside piece, because it already has enough bulk in there. We don't want to cause too much problem for that little pocket area. Too much strain on it. So we're going to just glue that on. Do this, and we're going to adhere this. One of my friends was telling me, I don't remember the name of the demonstrator, but there's one that always does a little heart in her glue, and I'm like, oh, that's so sweet. Line that up. Which you're seeing lots of black, so you got to try to make sure you're looking at the actual top and not those extra lines. All right, and then we'll take 3 of our dimensions, Stampin' Dimensionals across there. And just place that where we want it. Okay, so the outer part is done. Now we're going to have to figure out what we want to have popping up in here. And I thought it would be fun to use that hybrid embossing folder and make some different fruit, some citrus. So I had gone ahead and done a few of them, and I'll do one for you guys on the video. This one I used Parakeet Party and Granny Apple Green to make my lime. This one I used Sweet Sorbet and Mango Melody to make my grapefruit. And my orange has Mango Melody and Pumpkin Pie. So I thought that for my lemon, I would do crushed curry for the skin and so saffron for the inside. We'll see how it looks. And I have a piece of scrap white here, and I'm going to start with the inside pieces of that. So we're going to start with the So Saffron. And I need my foam pad underneath this. Helps get all the even impression, otherwise you can end up with a little goober like this, because I did this one without it. Then I had to try to eyeball it and line it back up to get it better. That was a little bit harrowing, I tell you. Let's see, how does this go with those? Okay, I need more room this way. Okay, there's that one. And then I'm going to get the part that shows the outer peel. And it has an additional little piece. This whole fruit. And we're going to get into our crushed curry. stamp set. And did I do that right? Then figure out how to line this puppy up. And I'm not directly over it like I normally am, so all right. There are our lemons. Not too bad on those colors. Now we're going to line up the die with the hybrid embossing folder. And I line it up on the side that has the Stampin' Up! Symbol. And then I always have to think on this one. We're going to line up our fruit that we just stamped. And you can see where it's fitting in those embossing places. And then just fold it up, and I'm going to go run it through the die cutting machine. All right, and here we have our die cuts, and some of them got off a little bit, but I already don't need all of them because I'm just going to layer them. But I don't know, it just adds something to have that embossing. It's so cool. Now I'm going to take a piece of scrap white and the leaf and some garden green, and I'm just gonna ink it up. And I'm gonna go die cut those out, which is really nice that that set has 2 leaf dies, and I'll be right back. All right, so I kind of had played with some of these to decide how I wanted them to be in this little pop-up scene that we're creating. Just to kind of get a feel for it. And maybe that. And then, of course, our little leaves tucked in. So then I just have to make sure I'm not going past my borders, which I am. So I think what I am going to do is pick this one to be my starting point. And I'm just going to put a little bit of glue down here where it is going to connect right here. So there's no glue on this side because I don't want to gum anything up. All right. And then I can just start adding things on. There, that'll work. This little lemon got a slice out of it because I had it too close to the edge, too edgy. Okay, and you can have that, and you can always, if you're not sure if your pop-up, like you don't want it to be too you don't want it to go past your panel there because then it won't be hidden. So you can kind of look there. This time I'm going to put my glue on the front. My hands got sticky. That never happens to anybody else, does it? Stick my leaf on. And then, where I lost my other leaf, you could actually do it up here. Kind of like there. Alright, so then I'm going to lay that there. Try not to move it. Put a little glue there. Sometimes I feel like I need an extra set of hands. Where is my Nancy when I need her? She's not here for this video. Alright, so there is our little pop-up part. And, oops, I got some glue there. So I'm going to grab my little adhesive eraser that my mom had given me. These come in very handy. I did find some at the $1.25 store, and I haven't tried to use that one yet because I have this one, but I did get one just to play with. You can also take your embossing buddy and kind of rub some of that powder over any areas that might have gotten extra glue. All right. So our outer panel says, enjoy the sweeter things in life. I went ahead and had stamped the little flowers down in the corner. And then, where's my other phrase? How big is it? Sending you a big squeeze. I thought that would be a really fun sentiment for that inside part. And I'll go ahead and use my block and this foam pad. And I think we will use, where did that? Granny Apple Green for this sentiment. And just kind of center it as best I can. There we go. I love it. And we're going to glue it into place with our special Tombow glue. See, I remember to make my heart. I think that's fun sentiment. Okay. And I'm just going to line it up here. Trying to leave that even border. All right, so now we're going to close this up. So I'm going to pull it around. We have our tear and tape and our cellophane, and we're just going to kind of tuck this part in. And I am going to start with just one little section. Use my taker pick tool, and I'm just going to pull off just a little bit of this tape, maybe, if I can get it to cooperate. Just there, because then I can ease the side together, because I want that to match up flush with that score line and that fold that we've reinforced, or as flush as I can get it. And then you can just kind of ease more of that protective tape off, and you can make sure that you're getting that lined up pretty precisely. I'm off a little bit, but So there you have that. It's kind of hard to see on the black lined up. And now we can do the same thing over here. We want to make sure that that whole center part is tucked in there between the little pocket flap. That flap goes in. Then we're gonna start that edge. And now I had set it against the table too. That gives me a little bit of extra. There we go, just lining it up along that pocket. And beautiful. So now we need to decide what ribbon we want to be our pull ribbon. And I love it. So you could also stamp on this, but I do recommend if you decide to stamp on this, you do that before you assemble it. You could also put a thin piece of designer series paper. Just remember that you are gonna add to that bulk in the middle with anything you add in there. So I'm gonna go look at my ribbon and decide which piece we want to add. All right, so I decided on this pop of green, and just gonna slide it through maybe. And stick to it because my hands are still a little bit sticky. I don't wipe them off good. And there's our little pull tab. And if you find that your pull tab is starting to come off, you can stick a little glue dot right in there. And I'm going to do that. That was a hint that my friend Cindy gave me. I love stamping with friends because we can all help each other. Give each other little hints and tips that have helped us in the past, and help each other learn and grow. And some things work well for one person, but maybe not for somebody else, but you never know until you try it. All right, there we go. We just made this fun flap pop-up card, hidden flap pop-up card. So hope you enjoy it and get to make some really beautiful cards. Thank you for joining me.